And as you guys are, those of you that are in the meeting, if you want to chat, I'll open my chat function. I'm going to be kind of leading us through the program tonight. So if you have questions or want to make comments or things for us to acknowledge or to ask if people are sharing, feel free to put them in the chat. So Sarah, okay. As soon as you put the slide up, Sarah, I'll start the introduction.
Okay, I'm just trying to share it to Facebook. I'm gonna do that real quick and then.
Okay. Thank you all for joining. We'll get started in just a minute.
It looks like it'll only let me do.
It won't let you put it in play mode. You want me to try mine?
Did the screen change for you?
It did. It did. When you played the tested the audio before, it did put it in a full screen. You had it on play.
Can you see Facebook now, or is it just?
I don't.
Okay,
it
great.
just looks like your browser. I can see all the slides on the left-hand side. So if you go to, can you go to, see if you can play it one more time?
Yeah, I'm trying to share it to Facebook. It's just, it won't, I can't do a full screen of the PowerPoint while I'm sharing on Facebook. So.
Okay, I'll share my screen. So pull that off and I'll put the PowerPoint on mine and I'll manage it. This was the problems I was having last time. It's hard to be doing both.
Yeah.
All right.
I'll let you know when I'm done with doing Facebook, and then I can do my screen.
Okay. Thank you guys for your patience. Okay. We are. All right, welcome everybody. This is our second webinar during the Advent season called Faith in Action. It's a series that we're putting together on the heels of a previous series that we did called Do No Harm. And we're excited to have you all with us today on our Zoom meeting or on our Facebook Live feed. Thank you for being with us. Our theme for tonight is called Bearing Witness, Addressing the Stigma of Mental Health and Addiction. We have a number of people with us tonight who will be sharing their stories, and I'm certain that this is going to be a wonderful evening for you all. During the Advent season, in the Christian tradition, this is the night that people light the candle of peace. And so we're going to be offering some reflections on that as we kind of weave through our series tonight. I know that peace is something that we're all seeking within ourselves, to find peace and to find that sense of calm and ease with what's going on in our world, with what's going on in ourselves, with what's going on in our hearts and our minds. And so and with, with God. And so I think that talking about mental health and addiction is really relevant for this topic. We'll be having 2 more series, next Sunday and the Sunday following at 6 o'clock. And you can also go back if you missed the first one. We had theological reflections from a number of faith leaders, and that's available on our website at Think Tanks on Poverty /Do No Harm. Tonight, our 2 guests, I wanted to introduce our first, a friend of mine, Jill Hillman. She's a peer recovery specialist with a Heart Court, which is a specialty docket that helps people who are struggling with opiates in Franklin County. And Jill works in that arena as kind of helping the different participants on that specialty docket who are working working towards recovery and working towards getting through addiction. So I wanted Jill to come on tonight to share a little bit about her story and her experience personally, and also maybe what she's seeing in the community during this time. We know COVID and the time that we're in right now is particularly difficult, which is why we really wanted to carve out some time to talk about these topics and make it available to the community. So, Jill, you're welcome to introduce yourself and share with us a little bit of your story.
Hi, everybody. Thank you, Wendy, for that. Can you hear me? Yes.
Yes.
All righty. Welcome to the series. I'm pleased to be a part of it. Thanks for asking me to participate. So as Wendy was sharing, my role is a peer advocate supporter for a court program in Franklin County. And not all court systems have what we have, so we are very blessed in Franklin County. It's a growing trend called specialized dockets, and I directly work with folks who are in current opiate addiction. And in the theme of what we're discussing, I can speak personally and through my work experience that mental health and addiction go hand in hand. Personally for myself, I can tell you that my addiction to alcohol, which led me to very, very scary places in my journey of life, did not start from a bottle. It started through anxiety and perfectionism, and my own sense of setting expectations of myself that I could never achieve. I know there's a lot of stigma with addiction, and my drug of choice happens to be alcohol. But most of my friends in recovery are heroin addicts and meth and crack. And we are all in the same boat together. I'm a firm believer that an addicted mind thinks just like an addictive mind. I have healthy friends who have alcoholism and drug addiction throughout their family, and they choose to not drink or use drugs. But I have a friend who literally is going to run himself to death because he's addicted to running. You know, people don't think of addictions when they look like a healthy thing, right? But when every surgeon and doctor tells you not to do something, but your mind is set on doing it, and you might harm yourself in the process, that's the same kind of mentality that we deal with. My journey is very interesting. I had it all growing up. You know, I am not your stereotypical bottom drunk that everyone talks about. I had it all. I had a family. I was raised with morals and ethics. I was raised in a church. I grew up Presbyterian. I switched to the Lutheran church, first in my family to go to college. I had an amazing career, a profession, but it doesn't matter because my anxiety and my addicted head got the best of me. And within a very short time, this student council girl and captain of the volleyball team from Gahanna Lincoln High School found herself living on the streets in a physically and mentally abusive relationship with a heroin addict, several drug encounters, and legal consequences later. So it doesn't matter. I am a firm believer. I have the privilege now, because I'm on this side just for today in my journey. I have the privilege now to work with people who have not flipped the switch yet. They have not been granted those blessings in the past that I have been afforded through my court program, and finding healthy and supportive people to surround myself with. So many people that I work with have burned every healthy bridge that they ever had. And to be perfectly honest, I didn't realize growing up that I had Disney World. I was the poorest amongst my family, but I had no idea what it would be like to not have running water in my house, or food on the table, or an adult to lead me through life decisions. I now have friends who had no parents, who grew up teaching themselves the way of the streets because that's all they knew. So I always joke around, I am so thankful for my addiction, because had it not been for where it led me, I would have no idea what the world really truly is full of. And it opened my eyes and has led me to a place where you would never find me judging a thing. Everyone has a story, and right now it's so interesting with the pandemic, and in the world of addiction, everything, as people are trying to get their lives together, the first thing we say is don't isolate, right? And right now that is what we're doing, to make ourselves healthy in one way. We're totally saying, the opposite of what often is our solution to get out of our mental health and addictive type personality. So it's such an interesting, scary, yet creative time. So things like this, right? Our court program, normally we would meet in person. So when we have people who are in treatment providers, that are in residential care, things like that, we wouldn't even see them. So on the same sense, I hate the fact that I can't hug the people every time I see them. There's people I actually get to see more. I only get to see their little faces in a screen, but there's people that I actually get to see more now because of COVID. So it's those little things that I'm trying to grasp on some hope for, and find some positivity as well. But I think my main objective here is the stigma of mental health and addiction. I can guarantee you not one person, when I graduated 6th in my class from high school, would have predicted that I would have landed myself in the workhouse in Franklin County Jail and living on the streets in that life. I can guarantee you that those of you on this Zoom, or whoever's going to be seeing this, someone, whether you know it or not, several people who are currently battling something that you have no idea. And if you don't know who those people are, it could be you. I've experienced some trauma in my life, and I always find that my definition of trauma, there's some pretty scary situations I put myself in when I was on the streets. So my definition of trauma looks very different from everyone else. But at the same sense, trauma, the definition in itself, it sounds like it needs to be something so massive. But I have friends and family who something as simple as being rejected from a friend, or something just not going right in their day, can literally lead someone into a situation where they can't get out of it. So the stigma of trauma, I think, is also something, and how we deal with how every person, my background, on a bad day, I got a B in a class, right? And that to me was horrifying. Somebody who grew up on the streets would be joyful for a B on an assignment. So opening our eyes to how other people think, and just being open-minded in general, is such a blessing. So for our peace theme, right now, I can guarantee you, on any given day, I am so blessed and so grateful that I have experienced craziness in my life, because I can tell you what, right now, it's a really hard day for me to say I'm having a really hard day. Even when the worst things are going wrong, right? Like today, my worst thing is I went yesterday to Old Time Pottery to get things to make a new flower arrangement for my bathroom, right? I think I left one of the bags at the store. That's awful, right? Horrifying. Old Jill would have been pouty and ticked off, and I think that person, that cashier, didn't give me the right bag and blah, blah, blah. Guess what? It's gonna be okay. I think I'll be okay today. So, thank you.
Jill, what do you advise people that you're working with in the courts, like, especially now during the pandemic, when people are struggling and maybe they don't know, should I be reaching out to people and they are isolating? Like, what are some of the advices that you give to people about, if they're struggling with mental health, or they're feeling depressed, or they're feeling really anxious? How are some of the ways that people can reach out and get help?
Every day, probably the most used sentence in my handbook is, have you talked to your village? And in my mind, we encourage all of our folks to build a village. For many of our folks, I am the first member of their village, because as a peer, they trust me. They know that I've been there, I've walked in their shoes. So sometimes in the court system, obviously, until they get to trust our team, and I'm very fortunate, our team is amazing. It's full of social workers and a judge who is so firmly grounded in restorative justice and looking beyond the charge. We realize, I think I just saw a meme the other day, something about like, oh, that's great, you got the Band-Aid for the injury, but let's talk about the bullet, right? Like, what got you here? What's really going on behind the scenes? So the first thing for me is having people to talk to, and understanding that right now, and I think, I have normal friends. I actually do. I have some normal friends who I have seen going off the chain because they have never experienced craziness in their life. And then I have addicted friends who are going with the flow because we have a sense of tools. So because we've had to learn tools to cope. So my firm, my first attempt for folks is to build a village. That could be anyone from a faith, it could be a pastor, it could be a neighbor, it could be anyone who you can reach out to. And I so, especially right now for everyone, because everything is so, there's so much fear, right? Everything's fear-based because of the unknown. We don't know what's about to happen tomorrow, right? I have been healthy. I could be sick tomorrow. I have an 84-year-old father that of course I'm concerned about. I have a 13-year-old son, but even when we don't think it's going to affect us later, as soon as something goes wrong in our day, I encourage people to talk about it. It could be something as simple as, my toothbrush broke. And now I can't brush my teeth. And now I'm going to have bad breath all day. And I have to wear a mask because I have to go shopping. And this is going to be horrible. It seems so simple, but it's small things right now that for people that are on edge, or especially folks that already have mental health diagnosis or don't even know they have a diagnosis, it's those little tiny things that can add up. So for those folks who are on the other side, I always encourage people, how nice is it to just get a little text from somebody saying, hey, was thinking about you today. I get it back. I even get it from my participants sometimes. And that could be the door that could open somebody whose toothbrush broke this morning and is about ready to lose it the rest of the day. And you have no idea just by reaching out, So I encourage folks that are in great places, or at least think they are. Reach out to 5 people every day right now. People that you don't necessarily talk to. It could be Facebook. It could be a text if you've got contact phone numbers. Just check in on people, because you never know what that conversation might lead to. That person may have never contacted anyone, and you never know what you might get.
Yeah, thank you, Jill. And I know, like, from your work in the docket, like, that's part of what you do in your work is being able to check in on people and making sure that they're doing okay. And so I think that's a good reminder for us that we should be doing that for each other. I appreciate that. So we're going to keep you on the line, and I'm going to have Harry share a little bit of his story. And Harry, I know we were talking a little bit before, so sharing a little bit about the naloxone piece I think would be helpful. And then Jill may pop back in on some of that too, because I know her docket deals with people with opiate addiction. And naloxone is specifically geared to help folks with that need. Let me see. So our next speaker is Harry. Harry Cox is an addiction counselor. He's an LCDC3. He does a lot of work. I work with him a lot in the jail, helping individuals that come out of the jail that are trying to get re-entered into the community. So Harry's just been an amazing support for so many people, and just a gift, I think, to me in the work as well. Oops, I don't know how I'm advancing there. Excuse me. So I'm going to pull my screen off and let Harry go ahead and share a little bit about his experiences and his story.
Okay. Thank you, Miss Wendy. Always a pleasure. And Miss Jill, thank you for your story. It's very inspirational. My name is Harry Cox, and I've struggled with addiction for about 30 years. And I have 3 penitentiary numbers. So with the help of what I call faith-based leaders, families and friends, and pro-social mentors, I have been able to accomplish since then 2 master's degrees, one in spiritual counseling, one in theology, and another one in addiction studies. And I actually have a license LCDC3 for the state of Ohio, and I'm getting ready to apply for my license independent. In my job, I work with for a nonprofit organization, as Wendy was mentioning, and I focus on reentry, people returning home from correctional institutions, as well as individuals who are now, what I want to say, have criminal charges in the justice system. So I go out and I work with them to help them deal with the opiates. So at the end of the day, I do a lot. Not only that, but I work in the community with a numerous amount of outreach programs and different ministries. And my job is to really educate them on the purpose of harm reduction. It's sad to say, the reason why I'm so adamant about this is that it actually affected me. My sister died of an overdose. So the things I do in my daily life, I really want to go out and do more than what possible that I can actually do. I was asked the question, what do I see the most in the course of performing my daily duties? And what I see is the hierarchy of the family home being torn apart due to the overdose of a loved one. I see individuals having bystander empathy, watching God's children perish due to the lack of education and unavailability of naloxone kits in the community and the church. But what I see the most is uninformed leaders in the community who really don't want to focus on harm reduction. They don't believe in the substitution of one drug for another, as well as seeing people that I work with overdosing on a daily basis. So the overall goal that I want people to actually think about today is, how do we educate and how do we eliminate the social stigma associated with harm reduction? Believe it or not, harm reduction has been around for a while, since the 1800s. And we have so many different services of harm reduction that people don't even actually think about. The only thing we hear now in our communities is Vivitrol and Suboxone. But we still have needle exchanges, AA, NA. So I'm actually looking at this in a different perspective, where we need to actually start engaging individuals in a different modality. I was reading a quote this morning, which was really inspirational to me, because I believe in mental health and I believe in addiction, because there's not too many people in the world who hasn't been through some sort of trauma. And the MAT is part of what we call a continuum of care for an individual who's going to enter treatment. So I was reading Machiavelli, and it says, does the ends justify the means? And I wanted to share this story with you. What would it look like for our community to actually be able to have church leaders and other community elements actually be able to provide means of Suboxone kits in the community, where they can actually store them and justify the reason behind their behavior as a service intervention that will keep individuals from possibly physical harm and death, which is associated with the behaviors of harm reduction. So today it's important that we actually start focusing on some new goals, especially us coming from the addiction field, to get back to our community They always told me in 12-step, the goal of everything is to be able to give back. So we should be deciding and working with our community diligently to see if we can make naloxone available and ready for the uses through a church. And Wendy talked about peace, and I believe that peace is one of the biggest things because the church is what we call a sanctuary. And it should be a safe place to be able to store Narcan kits in the future, while still supporting and respecting the church in all aspects of the gospel. Because the church is supposed to be what I call the cornerstone. And we have a church just about in Columbus, Ohio, on every corner. So the true purpose of Suboxone, MAT, and everything else is to provide rehabilitation, addiction prevention, and mental health treatment. Especially today, as we talked about earlier with Jill, the rise of the epidemic here in our social society. My mom is the same as Jill. Her dad's 84, my mom is 84. And I look at this social isolation piece as people not being able to actually be who they are anymore. And they always told me that trauma comes in many forms. So it's important that we actually, she said, reach out to 5 people. There's nothing wrong with reaching out to 5 organizations that's going to support you in everything that you need. But some type of way with the stigmas associated with addiction and mental health, especially in my community, people do not even want to attend. I see individuals coming to treatment for one day and you won't see them anymore based on their friends, their social life and everything else. But I'm a firm believer in that addiction is very important. It's strange that I'm going to have to say this in order to show what an Nazoxone really looks like. They have this word and they call it addiction. If we have individuals would take out the middle of addiction and just add on, ADDON. Individuals who wake up in the morning, they wake up being a little self-centered. They minimize and mislabel the situation that they have a problem. They assume the words that the course of the day is always going to be bad, and they blame everybody else for what's going on in their life, which leads the individual to what we call the mental health piece, having low self-esteem, being inconsiderate to themselves, inconsiderate to others, having authority problems with other people, having a lying problem, using addiction as a crutch to not do what they need to do, have a fronting problem at the end of the day to say, I'm okay, and we know that they're not okay. So the goal of this, in all actuality, is to have the body of Christ, actually, in most communities, to step up and do their due diligence to help people to be able to have access to naloxone and naloxone kits, regardless of their race, culture, disability, gender, background, or religious belief. And the reason why I say this is so important, I remember when I first started with my addiction, I had went to church one day and I was under the influence. And the pastor said, I wanted to join the church, and the pastor said, you have to be tested. And I have never went through anything that was so degrading in my life when I was actually reaching out for help in a place that I thought was safe, a sanctuary, and I was denied. So from that day, I always have to have people show other people love, hope, support, grace, and mercy that's according to the gospel. And it's strange sometimes when we don't get what we need, as Wendy and Jill said it for best, whatever happens to the peace, whatever happens to us, whatever happens to the check-in. And I'm a firm believer, if we're not healthy, how can other people be healthy? Especially in our family when we have an uncle, aunt, sister, brother who are struggling with addiction. It's important that we actually go out now on a journey of healing and transformation to try to support all the activities of harm reduction in our community and educate them on the purposes of why. Have people go out and look at Senate bills like 341 and investigate them and what is the purpose of why we're doing what we're doing. Because at the end of the day, I'm really tired, and I say this with hope in my heart that things will change. I'm tired of going to funerals for my clients. I'm tired of not knowing, are they going to succeed? Even though we motivate them to a different level and we affirm them for everything that they need, that's part of eliminating the stigma. But whatever happened to the family household that's been torn apart, we have to do more. We have to go out in the community and address families and see how the hierarchy of the family home has been destroyed. We need to start harm reduction in other different ways than what we're doing today. We need to actually start trying to succeed in harm reduction by following up with clients to ensure that they're in compliance with their medication, to ensure that they're not selling their strips. These are the mandates of what we need to do in the community in order to further harm reduction, to make sure that it's going to have a positive ripple effect in the community for all involved.
Thank you so much, Harry. My video back on. Yes, that is really, really helpful and meaningful. And I appreciate all your comments. I know you've been through this yourself in your own life, and now on a daily basis are helping people who are struggling and who are in all different phases and levels of addressing and recognizing the addiction that they're in, seeking recovery, sometimes failing and sometimes succeeding. And we know that that's also part of the process, that people oftentimes will relapse. I think one of the things that's really important that I just want to name too, that, you know, I've been learning through the work that I'm doing, and we're going to share after this a little clip from one of our previous webinars. A little bit more, maybe you're wondering about the harm reduction or about the naloxone distribution or what that means really. So we're going to have a clip that describes what all of that is for you. But, you know, a lot of people who are struggling with addiction may be encountering the justice system. And when they're incarcerated, they oftentimes they're not using drugs. Sometimes they're still using drugs, but oftentimes they're not using drugs. And when they get out, they may return back to their drug of choice or to some other substance that they're getting off the street. And a lot of the studies will show that people are at a greater risk of overdose at that time because their body is detoxed from, you know, use, or they've been in prison for a period of time and they're using substances after their body hasn't had it for a while, and you can be at a really high risk of overdose. So I know that's something that is even uniquely challenging for our brothers and sisters that are coming out of the institutions. And having naloxone on hand, which is the opiate reversal medication that brings them back to life if they stop breathing from an overdose, could really save someone's life and give them another day for them to try again. And it's so important. So we're going to play a little video, and then after that, if there's questions, if people could put questions in the chat or questions on our Facebook, I'll certainly go back to them. I'm just going to keep moving forward here. And thank you, Harry. So this next speaker is going to be it's a recap of something we played before. I'm going to share my screen here. I'm going to need a thumbs up if you're going to hear this, okay? I want to make sure that the sound is working. Oops. I don't know why it's doing that. Okay, give me just a minute. Sorry, guys. Sarah, you did it earlier. Do you want to share your screen for this instead of me?
Yeah, let me try.
Okay.
My name is Mary Loesch. I am the outreach coordinator and naloxone distribution.
Shoot, it looks like it'll only share it from this screen. Is that okay? Or do you want me to, I could go to YouTube and share it directly there.
No, I think that's okay for now.
Okay.
I can hear it and it sounds okay, so go ahead and play it. It's fine.
My name is Mary Loesch. I am the outreach coordinator and naloxone distribution manager at Harm Reduction Ohio. Harm Reduction Ohio is a small organization. We are primarily volunteer run, and we are just over 2 years old, about 2.5. So we're a small group and we are a new program, but in that time, we have distributed over 10,000 doses of naloxone. So we're very proud of the work that we've done, and we are working every day to get Narcan and naloxone in the hands of those who will use it to reverse an overdose. So Harm Reduction Ohio, primarily right now, what we provide is naloxone or Narcan. And the way that we do that is we have an online ordering system. So anyone in Ohio can go to harmreductionohio.org and order Narcan or intramuscular naloxone for completely free from our website. We will ship it directly to you. There are some questions and a training that you have to go through. It's very short, but that survey information is completely confidential. We give anonymous demographic data to ODH, Ohio Department of Health, but all names and addresses remain completely confidential. We do not share that information with anyone. We share no identifying information. So essentially, we have two arms of our program. We have the online distribution service where people can just go online and order, and we'll mail it to you. Or we have our lay distribution program. And that consists of organizations and peers, meaning people who use drugs or people who live or work in the drug using community. We set them up with a bulk shipment of 12 Narcan or 20 IM naloxone for them to distribute into their community. So what do I mean when I say Narcan and naloxone? Naloxone is the drug that is in Narcan, and it is the drug that reverses an opioid overdose. So naloxone is an opioid antagonist, meaning once all the opioid receptors in the brain are covered with an opioid, the brain triggers respiratory distress. And so breathing becomes labored, it becomes slow, or it ceases. And so what happens is when you give the naloxone, it goes in, it forces the opioids out of the receptors and then covers them, which then regains breathing function. So once the opioid's out of the receptors and the naloxone is in there, your body tells you to start breathing again. And that's how the overdose is reversed. So Narcan is the name brand of the nasal aspirator that looks like this guy. Naloxone is the medicine that is in Narcan. Narcan is the name brand, kind of like how acetaminophen is in Tylenol. So what Harm Reduction Ohio has to offer right now is we have either the Narcan nasal spray, or we have our intramuscular naloxone injectable. And that comes in a little vial like this, and it comes with 2 intramuscular syringes. So if you were to order Narcan nasal spray from us, we would send you, if you were to order online, we'll send you 1 box of Narcan, which comes with 2 doses, or we will send you 2 packs of the IM intramuscular naloxone, which actually has 4 doses. There's 2 doses in each pack. Or if you want it to be a lay distributor or an organization distributing, you would get a case of 12 Narcan or 20 IM or both. So the Narcan nasal spray is very easy to use. It was designed for children to use, and it's quite simple. This is what it looks like. This is a tester, so in the real thing, this is not yellow, but and in case of an opioid overdose, what you're going to do is if that person is sitting up, you're going to just make sure their head is tilted back. And if they're laying down, you also want to tilt their head back. And then you insert this into the nose all the way up until your fingers touch. And then you just plunge the plunger. Once you plunge the plunger once, the medicine is administered. So don't try to prime it or push it or anything. Once you push that, the medicine's gone. There's only 1 dose per aspirator. And if the person does not revive with that first dose, you're going to wait 2 to 3 minutes and then administer another dose. And that's the same for however your naloxone comes. So if you're doing intramuscular, you're going to give them that second dose if they don't respond within 2 or 3 minutes of the first dose. And you keep that cycle going until EMS is called or EMS responds or the person revives. This is what our intramuscular pack looks like. It comes in a package like this. Inside are 2 sterile intramuscular syringes in a little packet like this. And it has your 2 vials of naloxone in it. To administer that, well, first of all, we use this brown packaging here and this black packaging here because Narcan or naloxone is light sensitive. So you want to keep it in its packaging or in its box until you're ready to use it because light will break down the potency of the medicine. So when you want to give an intramuscular injection, you're going to open your syringe. You're going to take your vial. You're going to draw up, you're going to put your syringe in and hold it upside down like this, hold the vial upside down like this, and you're going to draw up all the medicine in there. Now, there are instructions in your pack. It'll say 1 milliliter. You don't really need to worry about any of that because there's only enough medicine in there for 1 dose. So you can't give them too much. That there's only enough for 1 dose. So now you have your dose. And what you're going to do is you're going to inject directly into the arm, thigh, or butt cheek. So you kind of want to think of it like where a doctor would get you for a vaccination, okay? I generally tell people to go for the thigh because it is really accessible and it's a large muscle. There's very little room for error if you are injecting into the thigh. Also, ideally, you would clean the site with a prep pad and whatever first, but in real world situations, these needles go through clothing. So if somebody is unconscious and you have intramuscular naloxone and you want to inject it, you do not need to take their pants off or their jacket off or anything like that. You can just inject it straight through their clothes. And when you inject, you're going to go straight in. You don't want to hesitate. There will be some resistance. Just push through until the needle is all the way inserted and it gets down to this blue part. And then you just...
Oops. Sorry, I just stopped.
My name is Mary Loesch. I am the outreach coordinator and naloxone distribution manager. Put your syringe in and hold it upside down like this. Hold the vial upside down like this. And you're going to draw up all the medicine in there. Now, there are instructions in your pack. It'll say 1 milliliter. You don't really need to worry about any of that because there's only enough medicine in there for 1 dose. So you can't give them too much. There's only enough for 1 dose. So you have your dose. And what you're going to do is you're going to inject directly into the arm, thigh, or butt cheek. So you kind of want to think of it like where a doctor would get you for a vaccination, okay? I generally tell people to go for the thigh because it is really accessible and it's a large muscle. There's very little room for error if you are injecting into the thigh. Also, ideally, you would clean the site with a prep pad and whatever first, but in real world situations, these needles go through clothing. So if somebody is unconscious and you have intramuscular naloxone and you want to inject it, you do not need to take their pants off or their jacket off or anything like that. You can just inject it straight through their clothes. And when you inject, you're going to go straight in. You don't want to hesitate. There will be some resistance. Just push through until the needle is all the way inserted and it gets down to this blue part. And then you just administer the shot. All you need to do there, all you need to really know there is to stay calm, don't hesitate, and inject directly at a 90-degree angle. Don't go in wonky or weird or sideways. Just go straight in. So a few things to know about naloxone is that it can wear off within 30 to 90 minutes, whereas opioids have a much longer life in the body. And so what can happen is the naloxone can wear off and the opioids are still in the bloodstream and they will go back into the opioid receptors and cause another overdose. So if you are in a situation where 911 is not going to be called, whoever has been revived has to be monitored for 3 to 4 hours and provided with more Narcan or more naloxone as needed if they fall back into an overdose. We encourage people to call 911. We also recognize that it's not always a safe option. And so I just let everyone know that if 911 is not going to be called, that person must be monitored for 3 to 4 hours and given more Narcan if they slip back into an overdose. So also a thing to know is all Narcan and naloxone has storage requirements and an expiration date. So they want it stored at room temperature and it has a 2-year shelf life. Now the FDA has recently, they're in the process of turning that into a 3-year shelf life, and that will be retroactive. But essentially all the studies that they have done on this medicine has proven that it's very hardy. Even with extreme weather temperatures and decades after expiration, the medicine is still testing to be 90 to 110% efficacy rate. So it's staying within that 90 to 110%, even 30 plus years after expiration. So even though it has an expiration date, and even though it says like keep at room temperature, even if you had it in your car for 6 months or it's expired, you should still use it. The likelihood that it is still good is much higher than the likelihood that it is not. Also, it does no harm. Even after expiration or extreme temperatures, the medicine does not change. It does not become poisonous in any way. It only just loses its potency by a little bit. So it cannot hurt anyone. Now, this is true, period. It does no harm. It only works if that person is experiencing an opioid overdose. It doesn't do anything to anyone that does not have opioids in their body. And so we always say, even if you don't know if it's an overdose, but you think it might be, give them the Narcan. If that's not the medical thing that's happening, then it won't have any effect. It won't cause any additional harm. So our rule of thumb is give Narcan if you have it, if you suspect at all that somebody has overdosed. Sometimes it's not obvious. Maybe you came upon somebody in their car passed out or in a park, and it's not super clear why they're unconscious. If you have Narcan or naloxone, please administer it. If it's not an overdose, then there's no problem. But if it is, you potentially save their life by giving them the Narcan. Another thing to know about Narcan is, I don't know, I can't remember. I'm just kidding. Okay, so essentially use it, carry it, even though it says it expires, and to keep it room temperature, the likelihood of the medicine working is still very high, so use it. And you can, I feel like I'm forgetting something. I'm sorry. Yeah, so, okay. So if you want to be a lay distributor or an organization distributor, you can contact, I think there may be a survey at the end of the webinar where you can put in that information, and then we will contact you and go over the paperwork. So there is some paperwork required from the Ohio Department of Health for the Narcan. It is completely confidential. And one is just a name and address log for in case there's a recall, and nobody sees that but me. I keep it confidentially. Nobody sees it. And then I destroy it after 3 years. And then the other is an intake form, which collects demographic information and then risk-related information. So if you do want to supply Narcan into your community, you will have to be responsible for returning that paperwork to us. It's not very difficult, but it is something that you would be responsible for. And then otherwise, if you would just like to have Narcan on hand, or you know somebody that would, please order online from us at harmreductionohio.org. You'll go through a brief training and we will mail you your Narcan or naloxone.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. Leisha, are you able to take over now?
Yes, thank you, Sarah.
Right.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you for sitting through that portion. Mary goes into a lot of detail, but that is part of what this series is about. Here we are in Advent, and we as church, we are being called to give peace to our brothers and sisters, and we know that the need is there and the medicine is available, but is God waiting for our yes? As Harry said, in lots of communities, there's a church on every corner, yet people are still looking for sanctuary, for support, for success, and for new life through these kits. And we can be that. So I want to open it back up to Harry and Jill to see if you have any closing comments, and then we will talk about next week and then the final event in our series. Harry or Jill? And you can pass.
I did want to add something. I wanted to actually add on real quick to what Harry was saying. He briefly mentioned taking care of self, right? And he referenced we can't help others if we're not taking care of ourselves as well. So even in addiction, self first, when we're trying to recover, we have to be selfish. I do AA, but there's a little analogy where they talk about whenever you get on an airplane and they give you the instructions, mm-hmm. right? If there would be a drop in, the pressure in the cabin, always put on your oxygen mask on you first, and then help your child or your loved one sitting next to you. Because if you try to help your child and you end up with a lack of oxygen, you're not going to be able to help your child. So I love that analogy, because we have to take care of ourselves first to be healthy enough to be a healthy support person for someone else as well. It could be as much as taking a bubble bath, or, like the stigma of counseling or treatment when we're not feeling ourselves. It's 2020, folks. I think half the world should probably be in some sort of counseling right now, because we have so many things coming at us on the daily. And if we have never learned from an early age coping skills and mechanisms, and most of us never did, I certainly didn't. We have a lot going on in the world around us, and even when we think we're having a great day, there's things coming at us that we just aren't prepared for, and how that affects us. So make those calls. The other thing too is, as she referenced, I am in recovery. So I'm not normally around many folks that are in active use in my daily activities, but I will tell you what, here's mine.
Mhm.
It literally sits in my kitchen because I never know what time or somebody that I might encounter.
Mm.
I have a friend who's in recovery who carries it with her as well. She was at a gas station a few months ago, right? And literally a woman, it was passed out at a tank or at a pump next to her. And she literally she recognized what was going on, and she was able to Narcan her. So I think a lot of times I have friends that are like, well, I don't know anybody in use. So, I don't know about this Narcan, and it's scary, it's an injection and it's a medication, and it's scary. It's not. As she showed in the video, it's literally like getting your Afrin or your nasal spray that you get from the doctor. You just never know when you can save someone's life or help somebody save their own. So get it, use it, have it accessible, and take care of yourself first. So.
Thank you, Jill. Thank you. Harry?
What Jill was saying, I think it's important too. And Miss Wendy, we work together on Jackson Pike all the time. And harm reduction is one of the biggest things that we work on. Every client who comes out automatically gets a harm reduction information and an naloxone kit prior to leaving the jail, as well as Miss Wendy and them go in and they ensure that they get the Vivitrol shot or Suboxone, whichever one comes first. And I think Jill always is hitting the nail on the head. I like what you be saying, Jill. But I think that personal wellness piece, especially when we're talking about being the facilitators of another person's recovery, it's always important that we focus on our personal wellness. Because I always got a saying that stays in the back of my mind. I go back to Mary in the Bible, and I hope I don't run any time over, but I go back to Mary in the Bible. And it's strange that one day she had her son that was humiliated, spit on, ridiculed, because they called him something that he didn't do. And all of a sudden he was put in public, like the majority of our clients, to have to walk down the street where people actually shame him, stigmatize him, discriminate against him. And all of a sudden he goes a little bit further and he gets to a place where they actually take him and they put him on the cross and they pound a wreath to his head. How many of the people that we deal with in addiction today, people are pounding these thoughts inside of their head to tell them that you'll never change, you'll never do nothing. And then actually they took him and they hung him up between two thieves on the cross, and he yelled out to God, he said, "Why have you forsaken me?" And how many people that we deal with in addiction today are yelling the same thing? And now COVID, they're yelling the same thing. Why have you forsaken me? But I want you to think about the real moral of the story. Through all of this, one person stood fast and everything, and that was Mary. She watched her son go through all of this, and she actually stopped to clean up the blood. And then she went back a couple of days later and she looked in the tomb and she said, "He has rose again," but we still had those doubters laying around. I want you to think about, in our profession, we're dealing with other people. How could our day ever be worse than Mary's? And if we take due diligence and work with our clients on a professional level and take care of ourselves, we too will see our clients rise again. So that's it.
Can't be said any better than that, Harry. Thank you very much. So brothers and sisters, as we go through this Advent season, let's reflect on these words from tonight and now what we know about what's available and what we can make happen in our communities through our churches. Next week, as you can see on the website or the Facebook page, on December the 13th, the theme will be joy. And I think this will be a really pivotal part of the series. We are calling this one Recovery Talks, and we will have people, just like what Harry was saying, people who have either been helped or have been hurt by the church when they were in their moment of need around addiction and recovery. So we hope that you will join next week. I think it will be riveting, and I think it will really help us to wake up to what's happening around us, that we can't hide from it anymore, and that God is calling us to move forward, to be there for our brothers and sisters in this way that is available, that is common, and that does no harm. And also, this event tonight is available. The recording is available, as Wendy said. So if your church or groups that you're involved in are meeting this week and you would like to show it, we really encourage you to do so. It's available, and everyone and anyone has the opportunity to share it and to promote this work. We would appreciate it. So thank you all again. Thank you to Wendy and Sarah for putting this on tonight, for Jill and Harry for speaking, and for our planning team that has put in hours and hours in making this series possible. So blessings to all of you. Thank you again for joining, and good night.